This is lesson number 5 in the Drawing is a Skill unit. In this lesson, we will learn about grid drawing and comparison. This is part 1. The concept for this lesson is grid drawing. Grid drawing is a drawing strategy or technique that allows you to use a grid to help you transfer an image from a reference photo into your artwork, similar to what we did with the shape building method. But with this one, you use a grid and you put it over your reference photo, and then you create the same grid on the piece of paper. Then you're going to draw one square at a time onto your paper. The grid helps you figure out where each part of the image belongs. So instead of trying to draw the whole thing at once, you break it down into smaller parts, making it less complicated. The mindset for this lesson is always analyze your drawing by comparing size, space, and angles. Every time you put a new line into a drawing or a new shape, it has a relationship to what is already there. For example, if you were to draw a face, and you draw the pupils of the eyes, those pupils of the eyes line up with the corner of the mouth. So if you were to draw an imaginary line between the pupil and the corner of the mouth, you would be able to tell if they were in the right spot. So always ask yourself, how does this part of the drawing relate to other parts of the drawing? Is it the right size? Is it the right space? The method of grid drawing was invented by Albrecht Dürer in 1675. There were no photographs back then, so he would be drawing from a sitter, from looking at something. So he used a frame that he would put a grid inside of using string. He would create the grid lines, and he would put that in front of the subject that he was about to draw or paint. And then he would also put the same grid onto his canvas or board, and he would still use the same method where he would choose a square and then find that square on his artwork and then transfer the image one part at a time so he could improve the accuracy. You can compare grid drawing to a map. So if I were to give you a map of New York State and ask you to find a spot, it may be difficult, but then if I were to add the latitude and longitude lines, you would be able to locate that spot pretty easily. In the same way, if I were to give you a photograph and tell you to draw it, it would be difficult. But if we add the grid on top, it helps us locate where each line or shape or color value should go. You can use this method for simple contour line drawings, or you can even apply this method to photography and transferring the different lines, textures, and values that you see. This method is also great for sizing up images. So you see the photograph there is very small, but then the grid is larger. Okay, so how are we going to be doing this? We're going to be using a crosshair grid. So a crosshair grid is very simple. It is just 4 quadrants. So let's say you wanted to redraw this shape, okay? You wanted it exactly the same. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to put a crosshair grid on there. So it's 4 quadrants. And now instead of trying to draw the shape freehand, we draw it one square at a time, or one quadrant at a time. The benefit of the quadrants is that they kind of help you locate where lines are, because the lines cross over the crosshairs. So you can use the crosshairs to help you locate lines, and then the overall square helps you figure out where things belong within it so that you can recreate the shape. All right, let's have a demonstration of how this works in real time. The first exercise that you're going to try grid drawing in works this way. You're going to turn your sketchbook to landscape, so long sides are on top and bottom. Draw a vertical line down the middle of the paper. On one side, draw a shape that has multiple angles, straight lines. Draw a crosshair grid lightly over the drawing, and then draw another crosshair grid on the other side, the empty side of the page. You're going to use the dot-to-dot method to redraw the first shape that you drew on the other side. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so here's the sketchbook that's landscape. You're gonna guesstimate where the middle of your page is. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can use a ruler if you have one, but if you don't worry about it. The next step is you are going to create a shape that has angles and lines and make it pretty complicated. You're gonna try to redraw it, so it should be interesting. I went over my lines so that it was easier to differentiate them from the grid. Now we're going to draw our crosshair grid. Remember, you don't need to worry about making it perfect. So draw a line down the middle, and then I'm going to draw a horizontal line all the way across so that it's in a similar spot. And then I'm going to put my crosshair line on there, and I made the middle line a little darker so it was easier to see one side than the other. When grid drawing, you find out what's the first square you're going to focus on. I'm going to focus on this square only at this time, not the whole shape that I drew, just this line. I'm going to first figure out where that line crosses over my crosshair. And I'm going to put a little dot there. I see that it's like kind of in the middle, but a little bit higher up. Now I'm also going to kind of figure out where that next line crosses the crosshair. See, it's closer to the edge, definitely farther than the middle. Now I'm going to be comparing, remember we're comparing in this lesson, how far up should I make the corner of that next part of the shape? How far in does this go compared to that line there? What angle is this line at? And I'm putting points or dots, this is the dot to dot method, I'm putting dots everywhere there's a corner to help me figure out where these lines belong. And I put that in there, and remember I can always go back and fix it later if I'm noticing any inaccuracies as I go along. So for the rest of the video, I'm going to speed it up a little bit. This is what you're going to do for the rest of the drawing. You're going to use what's already there, and you're going to use the crosshair to kind of figure out where your lines should go. Where do the points go based on the corners of those lines? Erase if you need to. Sometimes I'll put a line down like this. I had to kind of stop the video and restart because I noticed I was completely off. This is not working at all. So I'm erasing this because this happens. I've been drawing for a long time and this still happens. So, and now I'm going to look back and forth, and I'm going to kind of use an imaginary line to help me figure out where lines belong. And I'm noticing my crosshair actually is a little inaccurate. I'm going to change it so the crosshair is a little more similar on both sides because it was angled up on the second side. All right, so I'm using the dot to dot method. I'm using my close observation, and I am trying my best to get it to look similar to what I see on the other side. And I'm using this space within the crosshair to help me do that. So now I know that that line is below the crosshair. So that'll help me make sure that it is an accurate size. I'll speed up the drawing a little bit here. Sometimes I'll draw in a line. If I think it's wrong, I'll draw another one to see which one's right. And then I'll go back and I'll erase it later. All right, so keep looking back and forth, analyzing what you did, comparing one side to the other in terms of angles, size, and shape. And then you can erase your grid so no one knows the secret of how you recreated that shape. Okay, so there's the instructions. Go ahead and go on to Google Classroom, open up assignment 16E, and get started on this exercise. And don't forget, you're using the grid to help you recreate the shape from one side to the other, and try out that dot to dot method. See what works for you. I look forward to seeing what you create.